But so what I did do as well for the exhibition, I have a picture again out of the Illustrated Railways book of Mansfield Town Station, and if you think about the station where the Robin Hood line is now, that's Mansfield Town. So that's the station there. But look at all these yards and sidings.
Wow.
And there was a triangle in place, and this triangle led to the line that went to Southwell. And all of it's gone. Absolutely all of it.
So what would you expect to see in all of it? Because a lot of these are sidings, aren't they? Would you see coal trains or...?
That's entirely what was there.
Oh, right.
Yep, the carriage sidings for the carriages was here, at what we call Tenter Lane now. And also just a little bit further along from there, you've got this little area here, which is the steam depot for the locomotives. Now, that building still stands. And if you're on the train and you come over Sheepbridge Lane, you'll see it on the right-hand side. But all the trees and stuff are that thick now.
Yeah.
Don't blink 'cause you'll miss it. It's like that.
And what was that, sorry?
That's the steam shed for the locos.
Steam shed?
Yeah.
Is it listed?
I think it might be, but I would have to check for certain. But again here, you can see signal boxes, Mansfield South, Mansfield East, Mansfield North, Mansfield Station South, Mansfield Station North. So there were a lot of signal boxes in a small area. Well, when the signalling was altered for the modern track circuit, all that went. And that's all controlled by one workstation now in Derby.
Oh, right. So Derby controls all the way up here?
All the way up to Shirebrook. Yeah.
And all that remains now, what remains now?
There's just these two lines here. Yeah, just those two, that's it. Nothing else exists. Because here you've got Burger King, and here you've got the retail park, and then back here it's grassland, few allotments and stuff.
What happened with the track when it was taken up, a lot of it? Did it go to make railways in other countries, or...?
No, it mostly goes for recycling.
Okay.
A lot of times nowadays when we do track renewals, a preservation railway will be offered it, but in those days it just went for scrap. And also from the same book, I have a diagram of Mansfield Central Station. This is the station here, and that's where the police station is now.
Oh.
And all this area here was brewery.
Yeah.
And you know Littleworth, don't you?
Yeah, it's
Right.
the little pubs there on either side.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, if you come down Littleworth, so the school's here, that's Bourne's Lane that goes up to B&Q, as used to be, or B&M it is now. Well, there used to be a railway bridge there.
Ah.
I can show you a picture of that railway bridge. But this is all now houses. And this has obviously been transported from the railway to brewery use. And of course the brewery's gone now, so they built houses on there now. So that's for you as well.
Is all of that gone now then?
Yep, nothing remains. Nothing at all. No. A couple of other local little maps with other things on to explain. But this is the one I think you'll be really interested in. This is off of one of the internet sites, and it's all three lines clicked on.
Oh, I see.
So here we've got the original Great Northern Spur, which came in. Here we've got the Midland coming in as well.
Are they labelled? Or...
Probably not, no.
Right. You might have to add some labels
I'll add
on.
some labels on. Yeah. That's the line that was Great Central that came in, and that's the Great Central line that goes off towards Clipston Triangle and Mansfield.
I see.
That's the one that British Railways got rid of, the one that we walked along.
Yeah.
And that's the one that remained in use, because this went as well eventually, and that was where the last train No, sorry, that was where the last train came out of. It was this one that went. But you can see all the sidings, the colliery, and you can just see where the sidings start to open out here.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting because I didn't realise that I knew there was a railway in the camp, but I didn't fully understand until fairly recently that when you got to the end of the standard gauge, there was an exchange platform because the railway that went into the army camp that crossed the road about 6th, 7th Avenue, that was narrow gauge.
Oh, I see.
And if you go into the Clipston Welfare car park, there's a memorial to the miners at the bottom.
Yeah.
But there's also a couple of boards telling you about the Clipston Army Camp, and there's a section of narrow gauge track there now.
Oh, is there? Is it original?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, as a child, I remember being able to see trains. I think from my parents' bedroom window, and I can remember counting them as well, counting the wagons.
Right.
So, how long was the railways in Clipston for, and how long were passenger trains running? Do you know?
Yes.
Anything about that?
Yeah. Well, as I say, the first passenger train. I knew you were going to do this. The first passenger train, as I say, along the Great Central, or as it was called, the Mansfield Railway, that ran in the early 20s. I'm just looking for the exact date now.
Sorry, the first section of the railway in Clipston?
No, that was... sorry. The first part of the line was opened in 1911, but it was for freight only.
In Clipston?
Through to Nottingham, yes.
Clipston. And that was what,
1911.
1911, wow.
And then the rest of the line wasn't fully opened until 1917, which is when 2nd of April 1917 was the first passenger train over the Mansfield Railway, as it was called, and it ran from Nottingham to Ollerton via Mansfield Central.
So did that go through Clipston?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first passenger train, the 2nd of April 1917.
Yes.
And then the first coal wagon left. Was it 1922? I think you said.
That was Clipston when they were starting to draw coal.
When they went, and was the train used then, or
yes?
Yes.
Yeah, train services would have started. As I say, the Clipston branch opened in 1916.
Right.
But the colliery didn't start producing coal until 22. So your services would have been around about the same time. The reason a lot of coal freight services aren't documented is because they're not important. Everybody wants to know about the passengers.
Yeah. So
your freights, unless you get somebody specifically making the effort to record them, they just slip by. It might be that somewhere somebody has. It might be that somebody has logged it somewhere, but I've just not found it.
So, the Clipston branch opened in 1916.
Yes.
Would it have been put there to serve the coal mine that was being built?
Yes.
Or was it for passengers?
No.
No. So it started out as freight.
The Clipston,
and then
the Clipston branch, as it was purely to get at the coal. It just so happened that when the army camp was being serviced, they took the opportunity to do what they did.
What do you mean by do what they did? To do passenger trains as well, or?
Well, yeah, because obviously they got to get the soldiers in.
Yeah.
So the wooden platform was built. I'm presuming it was built wooden because it wouldn't be a permanent structure.
Yeah.
Because obviously, sorry, not a permanent structure, permanent fixture, because they would have understood that at the end of the war, it wouldn't be needed.
So the first line, 1911, taking freight only. Then the rest opened 1917, the first passenger trains, 1917.
That's right, that's the first recorded passenger service, yeah. 2nd of April.
And when was the the Clipston to London train? Do you remember when that was?
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
And what year would that have been?
I'd have to look.
Yeah. I don't suppose you'd know how long that ran for, would you?
I've got a clue, no. There's not many places, as I say, that record it at all. As I say, I've only found the 3.
And was that a passenger train, or
Yeah.
would it have been freight?
No, I've been a passenger train.
Passenger train.
I don't think it would have been a 12-coach train, like the other services that ran on the passenger lines. But it's documented as there, and it was a specific condition to the Great Central operating and constructing that line. So it would have happened, yeah.
Where would you find more information about that? Where would you look?
I'd probably think you might have to go to either Knott's archives or possibly the archives in Mansfield. Possibly. But before you ask, I'll tell you that the ending of the passenger services started in 1956 on the Great Central. That was the withdrawal of a lot of the long distance services. So you just ended up with the local trains, then the Nottingham to Mansfield or Nottingham to Edwinstowe. They no longer went from Mansfield Central to London or wherever. And that carried on until 1965, as I say. 1966, the complete cessation of all services, including goods. And then, as I say, you start seeing the rundown because of the closure of the collieries. The first colliery to close was Crown Farm, which closed down in January of 1968.
Okay.
So this is the beginning of the winding up of this area. So then, of course, you've got the 1972 demolition of the Mansfield Central Station and the removal of the line and bridges. And then Rufford closed in 1993. Sorry, did I say Crown Farm closed in 68?
Yes.
I'm sorry. It was the line south of Crown Farm that closed in 1968. Actually,
The railway line?
yes, the railway line, yes.
Okay.
Crown Farm pit didn't shut completely until 1988. Rufford shut in 1993.
Yeah. So when you said 1966 was the complete cessation of...
Passenger and freight
From
Mansfield Junction to Nottingham.
Oh, okay.
And that was because of the Beatty report. Getting rid of the duplicate lines. Now, look, a couple of bits of trivia, if you're interested.
Yeah.
The stone viaduct at King's Mill is the oldest viaduct in the United Kingdom.
Oh, wow.
And if you go to it and you have a look, there is an 1817 stone there, because that's the year that the construction was started.
1817?
1817, yeah.
Wow. Do you know how long it took?
Well, the line opened in 1819, so I'll presume it took them about 2 years.
Wow.
And it's still standing. And it was actually used until 1970 by British Railways as a siding. And during the Second World War, it was used for the unloading of injured servicemen to the military hospital, which, as we all know, is now King's Mill. And the other bit of trivia was the latter Edward VII, when he was Prince of Wales, he used to regularly use the railway line between Tuxford and Ollerton because he used to go and stay a lot at Rufford Abbey. He used to go and see the St Ledger at Doncaster. And when he did that, he used the Royal Train from Ollerton to Doncaster. And that happened, like I say, every year.
Would there be a Royal Train that went wherever he went, or would there be one stationed somewhere for him?
Well, no, the Royal Train is looked after in one particular place. I mean, I can't remember where they were serviced. At one time they were at Crewe, but today the current Royal Train's at Wolverton Works. And then obviously when a member of the royal family wants to use it, it's sent to pick up and then use and then go back.
So who was it again? Just tell me.
Well, he was Prince of Wales then, but he was latterly Edward VII. And he did that from 1899 onwards. But this was what we call the LD and ECR, which was the railway from Chesterfield through to the East Coast, the one that joins up with Clipston West Junction.
Okay.
So he will have gone over Clipston West Junction.
Oh, so he would have gone over Clipston West Junction?
He would have gone over Clipston West at some, yeah.
Where is that on here?
It's that piece of railway there. It's gone that way.
Ah.
So that's there. Yeah, that LD and ECR was taken over by the Great Central eventually in 1907. And what it meant was that people from this area could go to the seaside. So you went to Edwinstowe station, because there was never a passenger station as such at Clipston. The closest one was either Mansfield Central or Edwinstowe. So you went there, caught your train, went to the coast. Now I say that, but there are colliery trains that most collieries ran at some point, and there is a YouTube clip. I think it's 1965, the YouTube clip. But yeah, there's photographs as well of the Miners Special running from Clipston through to Skegness.
So would that have been, say, a worker train?
No,
used, or
it would be for the colliery families, you know. So if I was a worker at Clipston Pit, my wife and children could get on the train. And
but the actual passenger train, surely the collieries didn't own passenger trains, did they? Or would it have been the?
It would no, because any company can hire a service.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're talking about at a time when it was British Railways, so you hadn't got the shenanigans of the modern, 23 different operators and all this sort of stuff. You just rang British Railways up and said, look, we would like to hire a train from here to there, can you accommodate us? And the answer was usually yes. So that's
so the Clipston to London, would that have been via the wooden platform that was erected, or was that purely just for World War One?
I would think that would probably be used for that service, yes. But it would have been removed at some point, because when you look at the colliery specials, the people are using trestle ladders to climb up to the coaches.
Yeah.
And incidentally, going back to that, just to give you an idea, there's a report here dated 1923 that 1,550 adults and children left Edwinstowe to the seaside, and it had to use 2 trains. There were that too many people for one service, so they booked 2 trains.
And that was Edwinstowe
to Skegness.
To Skegness.
Yeah.
And when was that?
1923.
1923. Wow.
Yeah.
Would that have just been a day trip?
It was a day trip, yes, and it was for both Clipston and Thoresby collieries.
Oh. And they needed two trains.
2 trains, yeah.
amazing.
Well, again, you're talking about people that would not normally have the ability to go on holiday. Certainly not any great distance. I mean, that's one of the things that the railways were good for. They changed everything in this country, even time. Because if you go to places like Bristol Temple Meads, there's a clock on the front of Bristol Station, which, if you look at your wristwatch, it will have a different time on it. The reason being is, before we adopted Greenwich Mean Time, which was brought about by the railway, every location went by the sun. And the daylight was different in Penzance as it would be in Newcastle. So therefore the times of the day would be different. So the sun rose earlier at point A, later at point B, so the time at point A, when it was 9 o'clock, by the time it was 9 o'clock in point B, it might be 9:30, 10 o'clock at point A. So eventually this caused havoc, because if you're trying to operate a railway timetable, you start off from point A at 9 o'clock and you arrive at point B at 9 o'clock. How can that be? So eventually, for the ease of timetabling, not only for passengers but for goods as well, they adopted standard time, railway time, and that became lodged in Parliament because people were kicking off, it's not right, and we've been doing it this way for hundreds of years, blah, 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 blah. And eventually they adopted the system, based it at Greenwich, because that's zero meridian, and it became known as Greenwich Mean Time. But the railways meant more than just moving coal. They changed everything. I say, even the pots and pans that we cooked with, the introduction of things like steel. So your cast iron cooking pots that were made locally, mass producing of steel pots and sending them all over the country. They were cheaper than cast iron because they were bulk made. You could also get delicacies anywhere. You talk about oysters. They were traditionally for poor people, in East London and stuff. Well, all of a sudden, they were being took by the train up to the fancy restaurants in the capital and so forth, and fresh as a daisy. And it worked with other things, strawberries, watercress. There is actually a railway line in the south of England called the Watercress Line, because it was built purely to move watercress. Other things as well, rhubarb. Daft as it sounds, there used to be trains full of rhubarb.
And asparagus.
Yeah. Fish trains. We moved anything. British Railways sort of inherited this massive lines from the Victorian era. Not only did it get the lines and the signalling and the rolling stock, but it also was given the practices. Some of the practices were set in stone with Parliament and couldn't be redacted without an Act of Parliament. Those are called grandfather rights. But it meant that British Railways couldn't refuse any load. They became what they call common carriers. So if you came up and said, I want a hay bale, and you could facilitate that move, we had to do it. And likewise, if you came along and said, look, I've just made this massive cylinder, it's 300 feet long and it's 18 foot in diameter, we would have to find a way of moving it. And that's why we've got regulations that still work on the railway, what we call outer gauge loads. And in some older things, I can show you clips on YouTube again, where they are moving large loads. Some places you see the S&T dismantling the signals so that the load as it gets moved doesn't demolish the signal. And you have to be very careful. Even today, when I was at work, the outer gauge loads, you couldn't send them certain routes because of bridges, because they wouldn't fit under them, or the weight of the train was too much, or because of the width of the service, you couldn't have a train passing it. So it had to be guaranteed an empty line at the side of it. And these are all things that the Victorians, because they were so inhibited with how they could move stuff in the early days, they just put it on rails. and it carried on being moved by rails.
So when you say they had to move it,
Yeah.
so if I came along and I wanted to move something really big, would they have to do it for me so long as I could pay?
As long as you could pay the price, yes. Yeah.
They'd have to.
Yes, they would have to. Yeah. And it was called being a common carrier. Yep. And as I say, that carried on into the our days. And there are still some things on the modern railway that's still governed by grandfather rights, mostly to do with things like there's a railway line that runs through, I think it's south of Manchester, and there's one service a week on it, and it's because the Act of Parliament says that we must run a passenger train. The wording is you must run a passenger train, so they do. They run a train, one train a week, and it only goes in one direction. There's no return service.
Does anybody use it? Do you know?
Yeah. They have to, because even if only one person uses it, the law says it's got to run.
Yeah.
So people actually make it their business to use it, just so that it keeps running.
Oh, lovely. So, you know, the railways in Clipston, who would have built them? I know the companies that you talked about, but in terms of the labourers, where would they have been, local or?
No, there'd have been the railway navvies. They were sort of brought on from the canals, because obviously once Railway Mania took off, the canals died a death, literally overnight. And these navvies that had been used to building canals, they were obviously out of work. They were exactly what the railway wanted. There was loads of them. They weren't frightened of hard graft. Didn't have to pay them much.
Did they move with the work?
Yes.
Is that the idea of a navvy?
Well, I say if you look at some of the stories, the navvies, certainly on places like the Settle and Carlisle, they're from Ireland. Places like that. Anywhere where the work was, you would get, people going there to earn a crust. But another bit of trivia for you, the fencing on the railway. If you look at companies like the United States, you'll see that the railways aren't fenced. Well, when I was at signalling school, I was told that the fencing was not to keep the public out, it was to keep the railway navvies in. Because when they used to not be digging the line and laying the track, they were getting drunk, going to see relevant ladies, and causing mayhem wherever they could. Fighting, brawling, theft, murder, all these sort of things. So eventually the railway started putting fences up to keep them where they should be. And that's the origin of the railway fencing.
And where would they have slept while they were working? I mean, would they come to an area until a track was built and stay in the area, or?
Well, if you were constructing a line, say from Mansfield to Nottingham, they would start at a certain point and work towards another point, and sometimes you would start the second group and work down, and you'd meet somewhere along that line. Sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you just lay the whole lot on one. But yeah, you were billeted in tents, and while it was sensible, you travelled to and from that camp. At some point, that camp would have had to have moved. And again, sort of areas like this, it wasn't too bad. But again, I'll use the Settle and Carlisle. If you go up there, even now, it's terrible, the conditions. It's cold, it's wet, there's loads and loads of winds, and you're stood there in your geo membrane coat, and you're cold, and you've got your waterproof trousers on, your boots. Well, these guys hadn't. They were just there in a pair of ordinary trousers and shirt and perhaps a hat, and they were expected to go and work digging cuttings and building embankments and blasting tunnels and stuff. Very dangerous job. Hundreds were killed, thousands over the years. Cemeteries, there's a couple that are just purely for railway navvies. One of them is actually at the top of the 7th Carlisle line. There's a few buried there. But yeah, there's it were a hard life.
Do you know what the life expectancy might have been of?
It wouldn't be too bad as opposed to other industries, because you'd got, other than the accidents that were on, you'd got things like the cholera, TB, influenza, stuff like that as well, malnutrition, all sorts of problems. So I don't particularly think there were long livers, but a lot of the incidents that's recorded, you'll have people mostly being killed in explosions. Where they're blasting tunnels or blowing cuttings or.
Are there any other story? Anything else you'd like to share before we stop?
Not without going off at too much of a tangent, no. So this is a picture of the original cast iron rail from the Mansfield Pinxton Railway, and if you look at one end it's flat and the other end of the rail would have sat on to the next flat rail, so they'd have interlocked with each other so that you've got a constant rail. And just while I remembered it as well, I forgot to tell you a bit of trivia. The Mansfield Pinxton Horse Railway, it was the 6th railway ever to be granted parliamentary permission to be built.
Oh, right.
And it was the first railway ever to be granted double track. All the others were single with passing loops.
So that meant they could run opposite directions?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. The first one?
First one, yes. That's definite. So you've got this facility where we've got new technology, and this is new technology because, as I say, it's predating the Stockton-Darlington of 1825. You really are in early days here. And it's just so incredible when you think about Victorian engineering, because their approach to problems, unlike our modern engineers, is this needs doing. Yeah, but it's never been done before. Don't care, sort it. And they did. And it's a testament to them that here we are some 200 years later, nearly 250 years, and structures are still being used. The Victorians built, I know they need tinkering with, they need, upgrading for certain things, and they need maintenance, obviously, but they're still doing the job that they were built to do, whereas some of our more recent constructions from our more recent engineers, like Millennium Bridges that fall down or that have to be revamped after 2 years because they're not fit for purpose. You look at things like the Forth Rail Bridge, the bridge over the Saltash, Brunel, and even things like this viaduct at King's Mill, silly things like that.
The oldest one in the country.
The oldest one in the country, yes, yeah. The oldest railway bridge in Nottinghamshire is that's still in use is out towards Selston. I've seen that recently. I know where it is. Is it Mill Lane? I think it's Mill Lane at Selston, and it's been upgraded from its original construction because it was just a single brick arch. Well, because of the traffic that was going over it, they had to reinforce it with concrete, but the original bridge is still there. You can still see it. It's just been sort of strengthened a little bit. It's the oldest bridge in Nottinghamshire. And I'm just trying to show you this wooden viaduct. But when you think about how much railways we've lost, railway we've lost in this area, it really is so very, very sad. There's a diagram about how it would interlock.
Oh yeah. Just like the little kiddies' wooden railways, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that.
Well,
Brio.
the concept as well was unique because with it being a railway, they still had to. That's the stone on the bridge. It's in 1817.
Oh yeah.
You had to, from quite early on, you had to distinguish your project as not being a tramway. It was a railway. And the definition difference is a railway uses flanged wheels on flat-topped rail, whereas tram doesn't. So that's your basic description difference today. But once you've done that, all your other infrastructure, everything was geared to solving the problems that you were faced with. So you went along, you came across a river, you bridged it. There was a road, you put a level crossing there. And Sheepbridge Lane in Mansfield, you know how you drop down and go under the stone bridge? Well, originally Sheepbridge Lane was a level crossing.
Oh.
When it was Mansfield Pinxton Horse Railway. Well, when the line was upgraded for steam, it was deemed that the speed of the trains was too much for people using a road crossing, so they tunnelled underneath it.
Oh, I see.
So that's how I ended up with that bridge. Right, that is. There's a picture there of the.
Oh, that's the wooden one.
That's the wooden one. This bridge here, that's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the embankment was built when that was taken away.
So was that in the same place as the viaduct, or was that somewhere
to
different?
The side.
Oh,
Yeah.
to the side of it.
What if I can show you on here? If I can find my bearings. Oh. Right. If you can see here, Rachel, see that little dotted line there at the edge of my finger?
Yeah.
That's the Mansfield to Pinxton Horse Railway.
Yeah.
That's the original route. So that square there is your viaduct.
Oh, right.
Okay? And when the Midland took over, they straightened the line. So where the dot is, that was taken away, and this black line here was put in place of.
So where's the viaduct, the Kingsmill viaduct? Is it on this black?
It's that square there.
Oh, it's the square?
On the dots.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the redundant line.
Yeah. And the wooden viaduct
Yep.
was the dots?
The wooden viaduct is the solid black line.
Oh. Oh, I can only just see that.
Yeah.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't see that there were two.
If you look, because of the geology of it, you can see there where there was a line deviation. So the dots is the original line, the black line is the new line. And again at Mansfield South, they did exactly the same. They took that horrible bend out that was there and plain lined it. Just so they could start using steam engines.
And the Pinxton to Mansfield Horse Railway, that was cast iron, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the new railways that were being built, were they also cast iron initially?
No,
or
steel
they were steel?
Yeah, I've not got a date for conversion.
Yeah.
But I think it was about 1840 the Midland took over. I think I'd have to look in my notes, but I think it was quite late on in the railway history that it was swapped. I've got a feeling it would. No.
I'm about to take a picture of you, David, while you're looking at your maps and stuff.
Fair enough.